Hello class, this is for class FTE217, week 4, assignment 1. We're going to disassemble the rifle, we're going to talk about cleaning it, and then answer some other questions. So I'm going to flip you around and I'll be right back. Before I start, I need to make sure that the actual AR is clear. There's no ammo in the magazine. I'm going to open it up. I'll lock it open. I'm going to visually inspect inside, make sure there's nothing in the chamber. There is nothing inside the chamber. All right, now she's cleared to take apart. I'm going to go ahead and break it down off camera. I'll be right back. Also, I need to say that there is no firearm inside the space. We're free of any kind of ammo, nowhere around. All right, be right back. All right, she's pretty much taken apart. Again, the chamber's clear before we start anything. But here's the upper. Here's the buffer spring assembly and buffer. Here's the lower. I didn't disassemble the lower, but for cleaning purposes, for inspection purposes, I took the bolt out, the cam pin, the firing pin. I took the magazine apart, the extractor, and the not the extractor, but the actual bolt out, and everything I need to do to start cleaning it. All right, let's talk about cleaning this thing. Generally, you're going to make sure when you inspect this thing, you're going to ensure that the lugs and the actual bore is clear. You're going to run a rod down it. You're going to run a rod down it just to in one direction only. You're going to do it out the end of the barrel. Never pull it this way. You don't want to pull it this way because you could pull dirt, debris, whatever into the actual chamber. You don't want to do that. You want to go this way, one direction only. You're going to break up all the carbon with some kind of carbon destroyer or gun scrubber or whatever the case may be. This is where all the carbon is going to be. You're going to have carbon buildup inside the actual chamber. So you ensure that everything's clean in there. You clean it out. That's just the upper. You're going to make sure that there's no damage in here. You're going to inspect for damage. You're going to inspect for cleanliness. You can you're going to scrub it out, and then you're going to run a pad, cleaning pad, one direction, lightly covered with oil through it until you don't see any actual nastiness anymore. So, when you're running it through one at a time, you just keep clearing it until you don't see any nastiness. That's the way it needs to be done. Ensure all the tracks up in here are cleaned out. You just ensure everything's there for the upper. When it comes to this, you're going to make sure that there's no debris in here. Make sure you have smooth function of everything. Make sure there's no catches. That you can lubricate this down in here with the lubricating oil, just to make sure everything's catches. You put it on safe and make sure it doesn't discharge. And then you can switch it back. Everything's done here. You never let that slam into here because it could cause damage to your lower. So you just make sure that everything's functioning correctly. I always like to do the bolt last because you're wiping everything, making sure that there's no carbon buildup in this location. Make sure the rings aren't damaged. I don't put a lot of oil on this either. I wipe it clean to make sure there's no nastiness in there, and there is a little bit of nastiness on there. And just make sure there's no carbon buildup because this is where all the carbon it goes through the actual bolt. The bolt goes through here, or when the exhaust fumes come through the upper and go through the gas block tube, it goes into here, and you just ensure that there's no buildup in there. You don't put a lot of lubricating oil in there. You just make sure it's clear. Make sure everything's clear and bright in here. You don't want to do a lot of scratching or trying to remove the carbon manually. You just either soak it or wipe it out. You don't want to scrape it. You ensure everything in here, there's no carbon buildup, and wipe everything down. Firing pin, make sure there's nothing in there. Once you put it together, then you can lube up the actual bolt, make sure the bolt slides in there, and make sure there's no grime or grit. I've always, when it starts not discharging correctly, it's time to start cleaning it. I'm kind of a victim of not cleaning it as often as I probably should. I'm going to kind of, all right, ammo-induced malfunctions. If you're having a lot of loads that aren't going off, light strikes, different stuff like that, and it only happens to one type of ammo, don't use the ammo. Or if you're having a lot of, you could be misfires, could be striking it correctly and it's not discharging it, the actual round. you know, it could be a firing pin, but it could be ammo. So always switch up different ammos. Make sure that you, if you're having problems like that, you should switch ammos to see if it's still an issue. If you're having misfires or hang fires or anything induced like that, jams, could be jamming inside the chamber, not wanting to discharge it or pull it, extract it. If it doesn't extract it, you could try different loads, see if that's the case. If not, you could have other. You just need to rule out the ammo quick and in a hurry before you start getting into the actual function of the rifle. Training your customers on actual shooting stances and stuff, very important. If they're not putting it properly against their shoulder, the recoil could not be enough because they're absorbing the actual recoil in their shoulder. So proper stance and how they stand is very important, especially if you're having problems or issues with the firearm. So you rule out the ammo, you rule out the stance and how you're holding it, and then you can get into potentially problems with the actual rifle. Yeah, when you're dealing with accessories as far as adding suppressors and gas blocks and different stuff like that, you're always going to have to retune, whether it's add more weight, add less weight, whatever the case may be. But adding any kind of accessories, you can't just add it and then hopefully go to the range and it still works. So you're always going to have, fine tune it every time that you use something different. If you change the bolt, use a lighter bolt or something like that, you might have to make this heavier in order for it to operate correctly, because one little change in any of this stuff could affect the operation in any of these rifles. All right, thank you. I think I've covered pretty much everything. Probably went over my time. Thanks. I'm gonna put this all back together. I'll be right back. All right, the rifle's back together. It is clean and safe. No ammo in the space. Everything's clean and safe. All right, that concludes week 4, assignment 1. Thanks.